Thunder Grunt.
Hey guys!
Hey Bob!
Welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show that treats the final edit of a movie like it's the script. And today we're going to go around and introduce ourselves, just like we do every time.
I am Jimmy George. I am a full-time script consultant and screenwriter. My Twitter handle is @JimmyRGeorge.
And I am Jamie Nash. I am a screenwriter, and I am the author of Save the Cat Writes for TV, now on Kindle as of today.
Hell yeah.
And print. And maybe by the end of today, it might be audiobook too.
Whoa.
But they told me it would be this week. So by the time people get this, you could probably look into the audiobook. And if it's not there, it'll be there in a couple days.
And what's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is Jamie, @Jamie_, I guess @ is implied. Jamie_ Nash.
And I'm Bob Rose, and I know Jimmy George and Jamie Nash. And I'm @ThunderGruntBob on Twitter. Today we're going to talk about our second Stephen Herrick film of the show, because we did Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but we're going to talk about The Mighty Ducks.
Yes.
He's directed actually a few classics. That's why we
Yeah.
bring that up.
Yeah.
Yes, he's had quite a career. But he's the director. Jamie, who wrote this shit?
Who wrote it? Mr. Stephen Brill. Who the funny thing is, you know how I really know Stephen Brill is through Mark Maron's podcast. I don't know if you listen to Mark Maron's podcast, but he used to be roommates with Stephen Brill, and they kind of had a falling out, and they had a awkward apology episode or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he even knew Pete Berg, because Pete Berg became Stephen Brill's roommate. So he knew him because he used to come and go, and they used to be friends trying to do the movie thing while Maron was doing the comedy stuff. So
I know him basically as like the kind of like one of the Adam Sandler crew. You know, he directed probably my favorite Adam Sandler movie. He's written a lot of those movies, and he's been in them. He's like the asshole sidekick in Wedding Singer. You know, like he acts sometimes and shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, he's like the sole writer of this, right?
Yeah, and this seemed like I mean, I'm kind of saying it. Was his big break, I think. I think it was. Let me take a look just to be sure if I'm saying that correctly.
Yep, it was.
No, before that he wrote Annie Hall. No, yeah. No, Mighty Ducks was his first, and it was a spec screenplay. It was apparently very different in its original incarnation. It was darker. I heard him on an interview say he had this big like interracial component where the mother character was actually like a caseworker, and it was kind of an African American white racial component to the whole story.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was very gritty, and anyway, he kind of describes it as it was more like Bad News Bears.
Yeah.
And then Disney picked it up, and they took all that kind of stuff and took that out of it. And he's not bitter about it, but he said as a young writer, he was like, trying to fight for the stuff he had in it originally.
It's hard to be bitter about a franchise that not only lasted 3 movies, an animated series, and now a reboot, but also like I said earlier, it named an actual sports team. Like, would that movie that originally existed done all that? I don't think it would have. I don't think it would have had that staying power.
Right.
No, and I mean, looking back on it, he says he understands, like when Disney buys it, they're going to turn it into a Disney product. Mm-hmm. But that was just, he had a big love for the Bad News Bears, was trying to do something similar to that. And that movie has the cuss words and the drinking coach and, all that kind of stuff. It has that grittier, I wouldn't say realistic, but it has a certain realism to it.
Yeah, I was really surprised that the blue balls joke, when the blue balls joke popped up, I was like, whoa. Dude, Didn't remember that.
It's funny too that we're doing this right after Cobra Kai pilot, because watching this I was like, man, I never, because I've seen this movie like 100 times, but watching now I'm like, man, this is like Karate Kid and Bad News Bears had a baby
combined.
It's like at everything those two movies in one.
Yeah, no, I felt the same, and even to the point where I was like, I wonder if the new TV show is kind of a riff off Cobra Kai.
Yes, it's gotta be. Yeah, it almost informed. What
I doubt the old coach is going to be in the show. Like Riley, Coach Riley, he's probably not going to be in the show, but I'm sure it's got to have like Gordon Bombay, his fall from grace and his return type of thing. Yeah. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Seems like it.
Yeah. I mean, that's Cobra Kai is going to make a bunch of these shows happen, I assume.
That's true.
I assume.
What's next?
Yeah, what's next? What's next?
I know we got Punky Brewster.
Which is, I would not describe that like Cobra Kai. I haven't seen it, but that's a much weirder thing. Because who's that for? Who wants to see Punky Brewster go up and go, like date people? It's odd. Talk about sex and stuff. Like, who's that for? Okay.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
That's
Punky
really
Brewster.
Weird. Anyways, Stephen Brill, he's mostly had a career of writing comedies, right, Jamie?
Yeah, for sure. And I think
Heavyweights,
you nailed it.
Ready to Rumble.
You nailed it.
Yeah,
exactly. So Heavyweights was probably right off of the Mighty Ducks. It was like, let's do Heavyweights.
Yeah.
Ready to Rumble was one of his, and then he got Little Nicky, and then I think his directing career kind of took off, and that's when he did a lot of the Sandler stuff. He did, just as an example, he did Little Nicky, Mr. Deeds, Without a Paddle, Drillbit Taylor, Walk of Shame, The Do-Over. Yeah, so he's kind of had these.
Hubie Halloween. He's basically making Netflix Adam Sandler movies now, which I'm sure is
Hubie Halloween.
It's a good paying gig. You got, yeah,
absolutely.
And he's spearheading the series, right? The Mighty Ducks series. Is
he? I actually don't know anything about the series.
I'm almost positive he's the showrunner.
Just looking at his credits, I think I see a written by for episode 1. So it's usually the creator.
So, yeah.
Wow. So that actually makes me really intrigued to watch it now. Like,
me too. Yeah,
that Stephen Brill's actually involved. Okay. The one thing I remember about Stephen Brill, Jamie, you might remember this, is that he took over for Fanboys when Fanboys was re-edited, and the giant, because they tried to edit out the cancer storyline.
That's right.
And the entire internet of Star Wars fans attacked Stephen Brill. And he went hard pushback against them publicly, like on Reddit. It was...
He was the original Joss Whedon.
Yeah. No, he wasn't. Yeah.
In the good, well, not the good way, but not the bad way either. You know what I'm saying?
Right. But let's move on to setup. And double bump catalyst. What is that, Jamie? Explain. Help.
Oh, well, one last thing before we jump into it. One last thing.
Ahead.
Box office. So
box office.
Thank you.
This movie is an interesting one, and sometimes we skip box office, but I sort of was interested in this one. This one made $50 million. Okay, off of a $10 million budget in 1992, and then you might say, well, it was 1992. That's pretty good. But then you look at it, and where did it fall in 1992? It fell in the 31 spot.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Just to give you an example, some of the movies around it are Wayne's World 2 was 32. It made 48 million. Sneakers was 30.
All right.
There's some good movies. I love Sneakers.
I love Sneakers. I love Wayne's World too. So.
My Cousin Vinny, but these weren't like, huge
hits.
blockbusters. Yeah. These were almost the under the radar ones.
I was almost expecting you to say like Home Alone numbers or something.
Yeah. It's surprising that this kind of movie spawned 2 sequels and a cartoon show and a following like years later.
It's pretty legendary with my age group, with our age group, right?
Yeah. So just to give you an example, like some of the other movies, and those are the worldwide numbers. Number 1 that year, anybody remember number 1 in 1992?
Ooh, 92.
Yeah. Dances with Wolves. I don't know.
This one might have had some crossover actually from the.
You said 93. Year. I would say Jurassic Park, but
so here are the ones. Aladdin was number 1 with 346 million worldwide. That was the big one. So, movies were making in the hundreds of millions.
Big budget. Yeah.
Big budget movies. Home Alone 2 was the number 2 movie at $173 million. Batman Returns was number 3. But that's sort of surprising.
The budgets on all those movies are pretty high, though, compared to Mighty Ducks.
Absolutely. So the Mighty Ducks budget was $10 million. You figure back during this time, I mean, who knows how much Disney movies cost back then? It was probably a ton of money. Home Alone 2 was probably the biggest bargain. They probably paid Macaulay $20 million and made the movie for 20, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's probably 50 or 60 or 40 or somewhere in there. Batman Returns, I don't know. I don't know if movies pushed $100 million then for those kind of movies, or 75 or something was the right number. Lethal Weapon 3 was number 4.
Oh, man.
A Few Good Men was number 5.
Jamie, Batman Returns was an $80 million budget.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Probably not including
70,
marketing,
80.
though. If you include marketing,
Sure. That's the interesting thing. Like, I think most people look at Batman Returns not as a bust, but sort of as a, artistically, of course, many people think it's the best of the Burton era. But a lot of people look at that movie because it was weird and it didn't have that $600 million opening the first time.
It's not a 4-quadrant movie release at all.
It's weird.
Yeah.
So anyway, Sister Act, The Bodyguard, Wayne's World. That's weird. Why was Wayne's World in there, but then Wayne's World 2's in there as well? I don't.
Maybe they re-released it.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. Did Wayne's World 2 immediately follow it? Because sometimes there's weird crossover.
I don't know.
I think there was like a very short gap.
Maybe Basic Instinct was number 9.
Wayne's World 1 is 92, Jamie. So Wayne's World 2 is not 92.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's Wayne's World 2 is 93.
Let me scroll back down there.
Where are you?
Damn, Box Office Mojo.
Box Office Mojo.
No, I'm looking at the 1992 worldwide box office. Box Office Mojo has it as number 32 on their list. Very strange.
I mean, I can tell you this: Wayne's World 2 had they used in the actual teaser trailer Addams Family references, so it was definitely later.
It's weird. I don't know how Wayne's World 2 ended up on this list.
But there it is.
Somebody write Box Office Mojo. Anyway,
so many sequels.
My theory on why this $50 million movie, one is probably DVDs or not DVD, more DVDs, VHS sales, I guess. Then cable. But I actually think, and Bob, you talked about this before we got started. I think Disney, or Eisner at least, he wanted to buy a hockey team, and he had this hockey plan to mix into the Disney thing. And I think that gave it added juice or added incentive to keep this franchise going, to rename the team, do all that stuff. That I think that might have helped seed the reason.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think also, Jamie, I think it was a rental behemoth. Like, I don't know if you obviously don't have those numbers in front of you, but
no,
I remember that being I remember like the entire wall of the video store being Mighty Ducks. You know what I mean? Like, I actually visually remember that.
Yep.
So I think
I buy it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was surprised at the numbers when I looked it up. I thought it was going to be 150 million.
Yeah, same.
Like you said, Home Alone, maybe not quite Home Alone because that was a juggernaut, but Home Alone 3 numbers or Home Alone 2 numbers. I don't know. I don't know what Home Alone 3 made.
It's probably not much. Yeah, no,
anyway.
I think the numbers don't reflect the cultural impact of Mighty Ducks at all. Like, that's.
I mean, my friends and I was 12, and so my circle of friends were 11, 12, 13, and like we all started playing hockey, going to the ice skating rink. We would turn the tennis courts, take the nets down, and turn them into hockey courts. And yeah, like I played hockey with my friends for like 3 summers following this movie. Absolutely.
Right.
No, this is a pretty formative movie for me too.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, honestly, I feel like I say this every time we do a movie, but I love the actual movie I love is D2. Like, that's actually one of my favorite movies ever. I love this movie too. But I
think most of the people that are really Mighty Duck lovers love D2 the best.
Knuckle puck, man.
It's got the it's just I think it's got the budget and it's already done with the origin.
Right.
And that's the one you watched on cable so many times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But by the way, so you mentioned the setup and the double bump catalyst.
Yes.
Well, we could certainly talk. I just wanted to mention one quick thing about that, because really what we're going to talk about is sports movies in general, I think, today. So I don't know so much about this. The thing I wanted to talk about was the double bump, because interestingly enough, Cobra Kai last week had a similar double bump catalyst. And what a double bump catalyst is in this movie, and Jimmy, feel free to jump in if you have anything. This movie has kind of two things that happen. One, he gets pulled over for his drunk driving, and that's kind of a catalyst. And then two, he gets kind of sentenced to the hockey team. So it's kind of like this two-step catalyst where two things have to happen. One, he gets arrested, and then two, he gets, his boss says, well, you're going to be the coach of this hockey team. Cobra Kai, not to go back to the Cobra Kai episode, but he gets fired, and then he gets in that karate fight almost, and it's almost like a double bump catalyst in a different sort of way.
Right.
It kind of focuses his trajectory after the initial catalyst that, the thing that ruins his ordinary day, which is getting arrested. Then it focuses the direction that's going to.
So you're saying it like these things? It's like a technique that where you have to almost create a pattern to get a character straightened out on the path.
It's just another thing you sometimes see. Like if you're analyzing catalysts and you see that there's two of them, and here's my rule for all these. If we're talking save the cat kind of stuff, the pillar beats, the midpoint, the all is lost. My rule of thumb always has been it's okay to have too many of these things as long as they come on time. And because it just kind of it's like one more twist, one more excitement. I think you could get overstuffed if you had like tons of them and they were going in all different directions. But and I think this movie has like 5 things that could be all his lost moments.
Definitely.
You could check them off. Yeah, it's like it's this kind of weird thing. So anyway, when I see double bump catalyst, I just see that as a movie that's got this trajectory that's moving along pretty rapidly. And this movie really does move along rapidly.
Yeah.
He almost has a character arc, but I don't know where you pin this isn't even one of our talking points. The Act 1 break in this movie.
Yeah.
It's like, tricky.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's weird. There's like there's almost 3 before worlds. There's before there's Gordon Bombay's before world when he's at the law firm. Then there's the before world of the kids that's really weird. And then you have a third before world, which is them as a team unit failing together, being a horrible coach and horrible team.
Yeah, him not wanting to coach, and
it's like the new before world. It's
its own. All 3 of those are completely different setups that are important to the second half.
With that idea in mind, wouldn't the end of Act 1 sort of be his conversation with Hans?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I would say. When he takes the skates,
wear
puts
thick
the skate
socks,
back
Gordon.
on,
right?
Yeah. Because then we have the upside down world, which is him actually accepting this role as the coach and trying to teach these kids, despite the fact that he has all these problems and shortcomings and flaws. And that is, I didn't track all this that much, but I remember seeing that be 35 minutes. So it's a little late considering the full length of the movie. It's like a 100-minute movie. So yeah,
but that's because they have to establish the hockey before.
Right, they got all these setups. Yeah.
Well, here's the weird thing about that. So and it actually was kind of informing me something, again, not in our talking points, but this is just something I was thinking about while I was watching Mighty Ducks. By the way, this is the first time I think I've seen Mighty Ducks, though I'm not positive.
Oh, shit.
Here's the weird part about it. I remember the cake eater stuff annoying me. I don't know why. I didn't like that term, even though it's a real term.
It's
apparently.
It's in the IMDb trivia. Like that's a real term that means people that are so rich they can have their cake and eat it too. Anyway,
I must have seen it because I don't know where else, unless that's a prevalent term in another movie. And I remembered the whole structure and stuff, but I honestly don't remember the scenes in it. So I think this was my first watch through.
Wow.
But as I was watching it, and again, this is much like Turtles. This came out when I was in college.
Yeah.
And I was watching like art house crap and stuff. I wasn't watching Mighty Ducks. I was done. Bad News Bears was a critical movie for me. It was a huge influence. It was one of my favorite movies of all time as a kid. By the time Mighty Ducks came out, Bad News Bears rip off. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't like hockey. I was out of there. So anyway, this is the first time. No, I actually, I thought it. I think it's a really well constructed film. But well, anyway, what was I saying?
It's not formative for you.
It's not.
It's not anyway.
Obviously, because maybe from this point on it'll be formative. So it's what I noticed in the debate section, and I would agree with you that when he goes and talks to Charlie and has the thing, that's kind of the break into it after the Hans thing and all that. Then he commits to being a good coach. It's almost like he learns a lesson early. Early. He kind of arcs
his arc almost ends there because
it does.
Because now it's just a matter of that guy succeeding in what he now knows is the right way, right?
Because from that point on, he's pretty good.
He knows what the compass is already sort of bending back toward what it should.
And Hans is the Mr. Miyagi here, right?
Yeah,
pretty much. Right.
Yeah.
The strange thing is, his compass never really gets. He never doubts it that much. You know what I mean? Like he stays on the true and narrow almost, because you would have thought like a scene. I know I'm jumping all around there.
Sorry,
you would have thought a scene like the scene where the big quack when he walks out of the office scene or whatever. You would have thought that scene would have been challenging for him. Like maybe I should keep my job, or maybe I can have it both ways, or maybe if I quit the team.
Yeah, he's already there.
He's already there. He's like, I'm
I'm totally with the kids. I'm totally on mission. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
So what I noticed about, so first of all, that Han scene, that's like 40 minutes in. So it's a long first act. But that's also where I identified. Here's the thing I'm taking a long way to get to. What I noticed about the debate section, it felt like it had an all is lost moment and a dark night of the soul. And then, because like when the team all breaks up, kind of, and when that kid says, I'm not going to do that, I'm leaving, that's kind of like an all is lost, like, I'm not going to cheat, and he leaves. It's like Charlie. All is lost. And then the hero goes into the dark night of the soul kind of mode, where he's talking to the mentor and learning a lesson and all this stuff. It feels like the end of a movie,
right? That's true. So that's unique.
Do you think? And I get like watching it again, I feel like that makes the movie feel so substantive. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It makes it feel like there's so much packed into one movie, because
there's so much packed.
Yeah.
He has so many of those all his lost moments in Dark Knight of the Souls.
Yeah.
Well, there's all kinds of future moment where the team quits again.
Yes.
Because of his sarcastic comment, and it's like, that's a Dark Knight, right?
But through it all, and we'll get back to it we'll hit back to it. But through it all, he still has the shard. He still hasn't. He's still wounded. Right. He hasn't overcome that wound. That's
right. That's why it's not the complete Dark Knight of the Soul.
It's anchoring him into his existing problems. They're still there.
But here's the thing informative I noticed about this All Is Lost Dark Knight of the Soul. I started thinking about it, and like Star Wars comes to mind. Okay, so what's Luke Skywalker's debate? He's like, oh, I don't want to help you. I don't want to go on the mission. And then he has an All Is Lost moment where his aunt and uncle die. And then he kind of he doesn't have much wallowing. There's not a huge Dark Knight of the Soul, but I almost wondered if a lot of these stories, I wonder if that's informative, that when you're coming up with your debate, almost think about what's a mini All Is Lost you can put in there that can then force them to take a look and then commit to the journey in the lock-in moment.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'm not sure if that will hold in every case.
If it'll track, but I bet you'd find it more often.
Yeah. This one, I think, because it's so long, that's why it feels like I could almost do a Save the Cat beat sheet of the entire debate section of this movie, because it's 40 minutes long. So you could almost do all the ins and outs. Anyway,
so that's interesting, and that's
really
unique.
Yeah,
that's a unique approach, and it works.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I was definitely struck by. I was like, whoa, there's like, because we're on episode 60, so we've sort of like trained ourselves to like look at the first act and how it's doing what it's doing and how it's setting up all the problems for the characters. And it's like, oh wow, there's like 3 different worlds being introduced here.
There's
like individually, successively.
I noticed that in a weird way, like this movie has like you said, just as many Dark Knight of the Souls. It has that many come together moments.
Yeah,
there's probably a name you guys got for that, but like most sports movies have 1 or 2. This one has like 4.
Yeah,
where like you feel like they're all finally a team again, and then they fall out, and then they are a team again, and it's like that's like the fun and games of a sports movie, and this movie keeps delivering on that one thing.
It's what it reminded me of. This is the other metaphor I was kind of coming up with watching it. It was like a romantic comedy in some ways,
the breakup makeup.
Yeah, because it was like 2 people forced to be together, but they didn't really want to be together. And then they come together, they break up, they come together, they break up, they come together, they break up, and they finally win the day.
A bad analogy for a guy and a bunch of kids, but still.
Yeah. It definitely had that feel, because it was like coach meets team. Team breaks up with coach meets team again. And it keeps going like that. It iterates through that a couple times.
Yeah.
Maybe that's maybe that repetition is maybe why it held sway with so many people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't feel like a lot of sports movies do it as much as Mighty Ducks does.
I agree.
There's a lot of story packed into this sucker.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, there's even like I said, the reason I like thought of Karate Kid the whole time was just because, and Cobra Kai is because Gordon himself is another figure without a father. Or a broken father, you know what I mean? And like he looks like Johnny Lawrence. He has he's Kreese, right? Riley's Kreese, and
yep, exactly.
Yeah. So now we're into sports movies, Jamie, right?
Yeah, Jamie.
Sports movies.
Yeah.
So again, we haven't really talked about sports movies.
This is our first one in 60 episodes.
Is it seriously? I can't believe that.
Yes.
It's really interesting too, because sports movies, it's the one thing I don't think I've written that I always wanted to write. So it's kind of like it's still on my list of things to write.
Nice.
Well, real quick, Jamie, what's just so we get a gauge, because we know you're not a Mighty Ducks fan yet. Right. Maybe you are now. What is like kind of your sports movie? I know Bad News Bears, but take that out of the picture. What's another one you hold up there?
Well, so it's interesting because as a kid, I'd say The Longest Yard is the one that stuck with me for a while. The original Longest Yard.
Burt Reynolds,
I saw that as a kid. And I watch a lot of sport movies. What's interesting about it is I grew up in a sports family. Like my dad was a huge sports fan. My dad was also a huge movie fan. My dad hated sports movies.
That's weird.
Because it's just one of these things where he couldn't get the real excitement, the genuine excitement of sports out of sports movies.
The games didn't hold any weight for him.
Yeah.
That's right. So for me, I mean, I probably go down. So that probably has some kind of bearing on me. Like I used to analyze like Hoosiers more by the basketball or something like that.
Yeah.
But I really like Hoosiers, by the way. That's probably one of my favorites.
Great movie.
Rocky, of course, is probably probably at the top. If you count Karate Kid,
I think you have to. I think
karate, it does. It can't. Karate's a sport in that movie, especially when
it ends as it ends at a tournament.
Yeah. It's
very much.
By the way, I did do a screenplay that has Bad News Bears meets Karate Kid. It's like a bunch of Mighty Duck kids at a YMCA, and like Jean-Claude Van Damme has to teach him or something. So I did write that. So I do kind of have a sports movie, but I still want to do like one with the major sports at some point.
Yeah.
But those are some of my favorites. I like Major League. I like the comedy in it.
That would be probably the one I would go to first if in my brain. That's the one I think. When I think sports movie, I think Major League. Maybe that's also an age thing where I came about and everything, but
yeah. It's a good movie.
Mighty Ducks would also probably be there too.
Yeah, definitely.
But Karate Kid, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I can't get past Rocky in some ways because it's just like, but
Rocky almost to me feels slightly separated a bit. I don't know
it does.
why. I don't know why.
I agree. I agree.
I can't tell you why right now, but
it almost is like above the genre.
Right. It feels like it transcends it a bit.
I'm trying to think because there must be some, like as a kid,
you know what it is?
Slapshot.
It's Rocky.
There were all kinds of ones.
Rocky is the story of a loner, I think, maybe, and it doesn't feel like a team. But then again, the Karate Kid is basically Rocky too. So I don't know.
Yeah, and that was some of the things I was gonna. So I missed that whole Sandlot, Mr. Big League, all those ones that people of your generation would probably know more. Like those are ones I really don't know. I didn't watch. And then I'm a big fan of the ones. So let me describe one thing about this one. So in Save the Cat genres, most sports movies fall into a thing called a golden fleece movie. And we've talked about the Save the Cat genres before, Monster in the House, what are the other ones? Buddy Love, Institutionalized. Full Triumphant. This one's the Dude with a Problem is a lot of this one is a golden fleece. And a golden fleece has 3 different categories when you talk about it, or 3 different elements. Now I'm trying to remember what those elements are. You have a team, a prize, and a road. They're the 3 things. So you have some team that goes down a long road in search of some huge prize of some sort. Now, a movie about a quest could be that as well. So all your quest movies, whether it's
like Lord of the Rings is a golden
Lord of the Rings is a golden fleece.
Okay.
Even to an extent like Star Wars, because you're trying to get the plans, you're trying to take the Death Star plans to the rebels. So you have a road, you have a team. But sports,
Infinity War and Endgame kind of, because they have sort of.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
It's hard. I don't know. To pin down what those are. I guess. Never mind.
Yeah, it's hard for me to wrap around my head around what that was. But so some of these are like epic fleeces, like Saving Private Ryan would be another one. I'm trying to think of the ones that normally get said. Then there are ones that are like capers, like Ocean's 11, for example. That's a caper fleece. These are the things I should write down in notes to do off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But
the audience likes you struggling to remember.
I know. I like hearing the brainstorming one.
Yeah, no, I want off the cuff, man.
I want it off the cuff too.
Yeah, and then we did Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. That one would be like a buddy fleece. It's got a lot of buddy love stuff, but they're on a journey. They're on a road trip. Little Miss Sunshine is another fleece. Anyway, these are all the ones that aren't sports fleeces. So sports have a metaphoric road, and that's the season. That's what you have to get through to win the prize, which is the trophy or the championship. So usually sports movies are golden fleeces. So the reason I bring this up is to answer your question of my favorite sports movies. I tend to like the ones that aren't golden fleeces. Like I like The Blind Side, and I like Moneyball kind of is. It does have a season. They're trying to win. I'm trying to think. Jerry Maguire might be one that I'm not sure that that's a golden fleece.
So you like
it's not.
So you like sports movies. To put in layman terms, you like sports movies that aren't necessarily about the championship.
Right. I like things that are set in sports, but not necessarily about
for the love of the game or something like that.
Yeah. And truth be told, and to bring this full circle a little bit and to move us forward into the next section, I think that's when my father didn't like sports movies, I think that was the problem is sports movies suck if they're just about sports. Because I'd rather watch a real football season than watch a fake football season. Because real football seasons are really exciting and crazy things happen in games and things like that. But in a movie, the key to making a good movie, I think a sports movie, is it's really all about the character, right? It's all about, so that's why the Mighty Ducks doesn't necessarily have to be about hockey. It could have been about many other sports, and you could have had
hockey is superfluous, sort of.
It is. It could be about
that they play.
YMCA karate, or it could be about baseball, or it could be about ladybugs soccer, or whatever.
Do you remember the movie Necessary Roughness?
Yes.
It's if you watch both that back to back with Major League, it is literally the same movie. The sport didn't matter. They just remade the movie with different actors and a different.
And we'll,
this is a great segue.
That's what I was going to say.
Right.
A lot of these sports movies are premises with new skins, which Jimmy can further elaborate on.
So Jamie, Jamie always. My favorite thing about like when we talk about screenwriting is like putting terms to things that we're already doing, and like you recognize it, like, oh, here's a term for it, and here's how
this
to
whole
do
show
it better.
For me. That's what this show is for me.
Like, and often for me too. Jamie, the first time you said that phrase, premise with a new skin, I was like, yes, I see this all the time, right? And it's funny, you referenced feeling like when you were younger, like this was a ripoff, and that's the the proceed with caution with using premise with a new skin is that you run the risk of it being too similar, just like you said, Bob. But Bob, there's enough differences, Necessary Roughness and Major League, that it doesn't feel like it's its own thing.
I love both.
Right? Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me that they're the same.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it works on its own. They can coexist.
And just to give an example, while I might have said Mighty Ducks was a ripoff and I didn't want to see it, my Karate Kid meets Bad News Bears was also a ripoff. And like you said, or like we said about these heroes, the reason I was interested in that one, not to pitch my own script, which I wrote with Bradley Paul, by the way, it's the reason the thing that got me excited about that was it was kind of very similar to that Jean-Claude Van Damme playing himself movie, whereas it was kind of like Jean-Claude. I'll pitch the whole movie to everybody. Somebody buy this. If a producer is here, you can option it. Give me a call. But it was kind of like Jean-Claude got in a fight and he was sentenced to work with the YMCA people. But he was kind of Jean-Claude past his prime, maybe a little more like Steven Seagal. And that's what interests me, and I found funny about that movie. Like that. If I saw that movie in a theater, whoever was playing that part, whether I always said Nick Cage playing that part or something, that would be the funny part for me. This
is kind of an aside, Jamie, but did you watch the Jean-Claude Van Damme Amazon show? I
watched the movie, but I didn't watch the show.
Okay, because the show was kind of about him being a washed up like action hero, but also a spy. They played with that. But anyway.
We wrote this before that came out.
Okay.
And then when that came out, I was like, oh, well, it can't be Jean-Claude anymore. Or, it was like, because originally I was thinking it should be played by Jean-Claude Van Damme. And then I was like, oh, well, he did that himself. Right. So, anyway.
No, but so it's a great technique to come up with ideas, right? So he even said it. I'm mixing up in my head always Stephen Herrick and Stephen Brill. And Stephen Brill is the writer, right?
Stephen Brill's the writer. Herrick is the director. Herrick is the Bill and Ted guy.
Okay, so Brill, I've heard in interviews, just like you said, Jamie, that his inspiration, the genesis of the Mighty Ducks for him was, I want to tell the Bad News Bears with hockey, and that informed everything that came after. So, it's really instructive that you can start with Bad News Bears and throw hockey skin on it and say, okay, well, what does that look like? And
that's where the alcoholism came from, obviously, right? Yeah,
exactly. And then they played with it and twisted it around to make it more premise specific. But the dangerous part of that is, like, what I wanted to bring up is, since Jamie taught me that term for the technique, I've recognized it a lot in my consulting. I consult on a lot of people doing the premise with the new skin, and what often happens is they'll leave out one of the core ingredients. Like somebody tried to do Poltergeist with a new skin, but they didn't have the Craig T. Nelson character, and the whole thing fell apart because they were constructing all of their idea phase off of this family unit that was doing things specific with the father and the daughter, father and son, and then they didn't have a father character. So it's if you're gonna do premise with a new skin, remember where you came from. It's like important to like use the roots in the right way and not leave out part of the equation.
If you're gonna steal it all.
I'm not advocating complete ripoffs.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah.
I just think it's a really good technique. And like Jamie's karate Mighty Ducks thing wouldn't exist if he didn't use premise with a new skin. And I think it really informs everything that we're going to talk about from here on out. Like it started as Bad News Bears with a hockey skin. He said it.
And I would also say, if you're going to go down this approach, and by the way, everybody goes down this approach. It's the this meets this exercise.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Die Hard on a bus.
Yeah, it's just for whatever reason, there's certain stories, especially the sports things, that they're really similar, and we'll go into them. Like they all have training montages. They all have the big game at the end. They all have.
Because those are genre expectations, yeah.
They're genre expectations, and the strange thing is they're like story patterns that are mixed into it. Unlike like an action movie, which yes, it has a car chase, and yes, it has a fist fight, but you almost slot your structure out based on sports movies.
Yeah,
because you're going to have the big game in the finale, and you're going to have the training montage in the fun and games or somewhere around there.
It's the nature of sports itself that kind of gives the structure, right?
And that's going to give you
the
your
finale has to
point.
be a tournament. It just has to be.
It just has to be.
And
that's what gets tricky about them, I think, in some ways.
Yes, making them different. Yeah.
What makes them fresh? But that's why I'm a big advocate. There are really two things that make them different. And we can talk about the whiteboard and stuff and how to go about that.
Yeah.
So number one, I think character makes them different. So I think if you bring who you're bringing as your character, what their background is, what their point of view is, I think that makes them different. And then above that, then it's the skin thing, and theme is tied to character. So your theme, the character arc. But then the skin is also the thing, and that's where we get into whiteboard stuff, I think.
Yeah. So I wanted to. We haven't done this in a while, and I wanted to. I think the most fun way to do it. I've got a list here, but I think the most fun way is I'll lay out what the premise is, and the three of us can create a whiteboard based on what the Mighty Ducks is, and show like the brainstorming process, right? Okay. So we've talked about this in previous episodes. It doesn't have to be a whiteboard, right, Jamie? It can be a notepad. It could be an app on your phone. It could be your computer. It could be note cards. Whatever you use to just do a massive dump of ideas.
Bob uses chalk on the sidewalk outside.
I do. I'm glad you noticed.
Big chalk on the sidewalk.
My neighbor keeps spraying it away with a hose, but I keep rewriting it.
and then he puts big hearts around the parts he likes, like big colorful hearts.
But that's why my scripts are so good, Jamie.
It's like, this doesn't make sense because somebody sprayed off the sidewalk.
It's raining again. Damn it. Yeah.
But when you're first coming up with ideas, it's really fun to just like do as much as you can as fast as you can, and so. This is not really a log line. It's like a quasi log line, but you start with the premise, right? A selfish, undefeated Minnesota lawyer, so we got the here, who's obsessed with winning, is sentenced to 500 hours of community service coaching a ragtag youth hockey team who's never won a game. So, I mean, that's the premise, right? So you start asking yourself, who are the people? Who are the characters that personify this premise? Who's your hero, right? So, like you say, he's a fit.
You're talking about Gordon?
Yeah, Gordon Bombay. So you start doing the mental gymnastics. He's a failed hockey player turned hotshot lawyer, and he's obsessed with winning. Well, what does a love interest look like with this premise? Guys, bouncing off of me.
Oh, you're
a love
asking
interest.
us. Okay,
Yeah, I'm
I
asking.
thought you were about to answer your own question.
Yeah.
I think it looks like a red-haired mother of one of the Charlie.
One of the Dawson's Creek kids.
Right.
Right.
A single mom who is working hard to take care of her son, and he's one of the players on the team. Like, that is a love interest that is very specific to this concept, this premise.
Who also hates who he was, but will love who he becomes.
Oh, and that's nice little touch there, Bob.
Yeah.
What does the misfit hockey team look like, right? You start just like throwing out ideas. Like,
how about a goalie that doesn't want to get hit with pucks?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
How about a kid who's way too big for his age and intimidating just by his physical presence?
How about some figure skaters?
Right, exactly. What if he picked up a local figure skater, right? So you've got all these things that are like very specific to this idea, like, and they are special because of this idea. Villains. What does the villain look like in this concept? Like, who is he?
The team across the pond. Like in any sports or camp movie, you always have the evil team, right?
Right. The bad. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The ones who look like they're from the Matrix and they can play. You've got
your privileged hockey team, right? And
yeah.
They're bullies and
rich.
And you've got your
rich.
Yes, that's
funded.
What matters, right?
Yeah.
And then that comes up with its own set of things that you can bounce ideas off of.
By the way, one thing that led me to think of in almost all sports movies, I was trying to think if there were any that might not have this dynamic. It's always the underdog with a huge road. Like, can you think of any that are like, I mean, besides
that's
like Rocky IV, yeah, where it's like the champion is the hero. It's usually the underdog. It's funny, even in the Rocky movies, then you have to bring in like superhuman Drago, or something like that.
Yeah, it's a comic book movie, right? Yeah.
So it's always, I mean, it seems obvious, but it's almost always the underdog. It'd be hard to subvert it to be the champion, but I'm sure there's a way to do it. But you'd have to make the champion the underdog, because that's what's interesting.
That's what they're doing with the series. Sort of, they've turned the Ducks into the Hawks. In the series,
okay.
the Ducks
you've
are
actually
the
watched
Hawks.
it, Jimmy?
No, but it's in the trailer.
Oh,
okay. The trailer sells that idea. They've subverted it.
The Ducks are the bad
now the
guys.
Hawks. And so
Gordon... it's Cobra Kai, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But going back to this whiteboard, so
yep.
we talk. Who are the villains, right? It's got to be a legendary Pee Wee hockey coach that used to coach our hero. And then you just start bouncing ideas off of that. What are the premise places? What are the places that we would experience with this premise, right? Like, think about it.
Yeah. Hockey rinks.
Right. Hockey.
Outside ice.
Right.
Lots
Frozen
of ice
ponds.
stuff. Yeah. Sporting goods stores.
Sporting goods stores.
Not even just hockey rinks, but I would also add professional hockey rinks. Like like that's a big part of the movie when they go to an actual hockey team's rink.
Right, the Pee Wee ice rinks, the streets of Winter, Minnesota, right? Like, you see the kids hang out on the streets of Minnesota when it's like 20 degrees outside.
The intimate places of some of the poor kids' homes, like it's really just Charlie in this movie, but we see his like where his mom works and their small apartment, which isn't very impressive. They're not people of money and
this stuff is born out of the concept, right? It's like it's like exemplifies the concept as a place. What are some of the things that will become special based on this premise? What types of things that would you see? Like go ahead, Jamie.
What do you mean specifically? Like
I need
hockey matches? Oh,
yeah,
props.
Oh,
things,
props.
Objects.
Yeah, things.
Inline skating is one that.
Well, how about this? What if one of the characters owns a sports shop?
Hell yeah!
Then you have where all the props are born from. Literally, you have the actual store.
What if Gordon used to have this old pair of skates that he'd given up that his mentor has these pair of skates that he resharpens when he shows up back in town and has them waiting for him. They're his size, they're sharp, they're ready to rock. What if there's a framed newspaper highlighting his biggest failure that like created the character that he became, the villainous version of himself?
No. I do have to say that when I was watching the movie, that was the weirdest part. like First of all, like even if it was Tom Brady missed through an interception, who would frame that? Okay. But secondly, for a youth hockey kid, they're framing this like let's shame this youth hockey kid for this. He missed the goal, and let's put it in a sporting goods store. I was like, what the heck? Anyway, that's my one. I was like, what the?
Hans is a weird, lonely man, I think, to some degree. Yeah,
he's just been waiting for the day that Gordon's going to show up
to notice that one frame.
They can use it.
Yeah, right.
He said, he's like, I just found this the other day.
This seemed very cool.
It's been sitting here waiting for you to show up for 30 years.
I posted a headline of your greatest failure on the board.
But some other good ones. What if they used eggs to train because they don't have any money and they have to teach them how to use soft hands? What if they tossed footballs back and forth to teach communication and teamwork?
What if they tie the goalie up to the goal to force him to understand what it feels like to hit?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So what if their uniforms were so shitty because they don't have any money? It just was like pajamas with like D5 and marker on them. So these are the types of idea generation exercises that you do.
What if, and like the naming convention of, something I never really registered is like the name, like how it's set up with the guy's name versus the movie.
Yes, that was actually I didn't even go into that. My first question was, okay, who's the mascot? The Ducks. Okay, so what motivates that choice?
You name the guy Ducksworth. It's right.
Yeah, so you can see the whiteboard.
And even things like their chant, the quack chant,
right? That's
the flying V,
the flying V, the premise specific tactics, right? The twirling figure skating shot, take the fall when they're trying to cheat. It's premise specific. Take the fall, act hurt, get indignant. So and then the last one I wanted to do was scenarios, right? So like, what scenarios would you experience? You said that one perfect, Bob. What if they tie him to the goalpost so he can't even move, right?
Right.
What if the Misfits kids get a shopping spree at a hockey store? Like these are the like what does this champagne celebration look like in a hockey movie full of kids? It's a bunch of Coke cans spraying everywhere.
We might graze over, but what if the world's greatest slapshotter can't skate?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, he's afraid.
He's afraid. He's literally afraid of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, these are all in the construction. They took the time. They did the whiteboard. And that's why it's so memorable, because it's so specific. Like, could only happen in this movie, in this story world. And because like, what I see so often, the thing that separates the amateurs from the pros, because for anyone who's listening for the first time, I read amateur screenplays all day, every day. That's my job. And this is the one thing that people don't do. They have scenes, like they have scenes, and they have great characters, and they have great dialogue, but none of those scenes are special to the premise. Like, they're scenes that I could place in any movie. I so often am given material that's like really well written, right? It's got all the ingredients, except it's not premise specific. So I could interchange the dialogue, I could interchange the scenario and place it in another romantic comedy. I'll get a romantic comedy script and I'll have all these romantic comedy moments, but I could pop them into any romantic comedy. But they're not specific to the concept.
Like, can I sum it up maybe a little simpler too? Like, what you're saying to me, Jimmy, is yes, it's a premise with a skin, but the way it's written actually, like, yes, you can make this movie with any sport, but the way this movie is written, it makes hockey integral to it.
Absolutely. Like, yes, every creative choice is so specific hockey, to a hotshot lawyer who is obsessed with winning, coaching a youth hockey team who's never won. Like, you could so specific to
the actual writing, the details make hockey important. That's what
absolutely.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to add, we were going to talk about this later, but this is a great time to do it. But we mentioned that all these sports movies have the same things: the training sequence, the moving through the playoffs, the moving up the ranks sequence, the final game. They almost all, whether it's Rocky or this one or Major League or anything. But I
Rookie
think
of the year.
Rookie of the year.
Right. I
Yeah.
love that one.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
so these things are like, if you were to ask me, like, well, how do I make my training sequence not cliche or not the same old, or what do I write? Just they train, they lift weights. But if you look at all of those, and this one included, so the training sequence in this one has the goalie scene, tie him to the goal and fire at him. That's a scene that you might not see in with Youngblood with Rob Lowe or something, or some other hockey. That's unique to this movie. You can only have that in this movie, and that's what you always want to be asking yourself whenever you fall into those things that you kind of have to do, is what's the version of this training sequence that would only be seen in my particular premise, and what's the version, the finale, when they have the figure skating move or some of those other things. What's the version of the big game? What are the tactics they'd use in the big game that would only be seen in my movie and not seen on Miracle or something like that? Like, they're not going to have a figure skating.
Exactly.
Like you said, you spent all your time setting up Fulton, so you can only have a game where everyone else sees Fulton and is literally scared of him. That happens only in your movie because of what you set up, right? Like,
exactly.
Yeah. It has to be those kind of things. Even the more realistic things like Rocky or something, which might show you, or Hoosiers, which has certain techniques like pass the ball 4 times before that's unique to that story. And Rocky, it might be punching slabs of meat because he's poor and doing stuff.
Yes.
Like, these are the things that only happen in those movies. If you're writing a sports movie, because all this stuff is going to be kind of formula, quote unquote, these are the places where you have to find things that are unique to your telling, I think. And it's related to whiteboard and premise.
Yes.
And all that fun
Specificity, man. Specificity.
And that does that take us to? Now, we jumped around a lot on this, so yeah. So I apologize for being a little confused. Premise, pretzels, and nightmare fuel. Jamie, explain premise pretzels, and I'll bounce. I feel like we've talked about premise pretzels before.
Yeah. So premise pretzels is just a technique within premise. Like, you come up with a really cool idea, and then you like, I have a lawnmower outside my house.
That's okay.
Cute like lawnmower. It's just like we're filming a movie.
It's like almost like we're talking over Google Meet.
So,
at our house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So once you come up with a good premise, then you kind of have to look at it from all angles. So you can almost use a premise 2-3 different ways sometimes when you get to it. Like, so it actually, it's almost like your premise has its own beginning, middle, end, or story arc or something like that. You fold it back on itself. What's a good example of that, Jimmy?
Oh my God, there's so many. There's like in Terminator 2, they have to break Sarah Connor out of a major secured facility, and then in the third act, the 3 of them have to break into a major secured facility. In
Fury Road,
there's so many. In Demolition Man, they're originally when they first wake up from men from the past awaken in the future, they're driving, there's an action sequence with futuristic cars, and then in the third act there's an action scene where the men from the past are driving the relic past cars to circumvent the future tech. So it's like stretching it and reversing it and escalating it, like we talked about in Men in Black. It opens with an action scene on the U.S.-Mexican border, where the men in Tommy Lee Jones is stopping an alien from crossing the U.S.-Mexican border, and then it ends with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith trying to stop an alien from leaving the Earth border.
Right.
Like, it's the same idea, the same concept, but escalated and twisted and given new meaning. And in this one, there's like a really pure premise pretzel where the story starts with Gordon as a kid, and he's got to take the penalty shot with his coach giving him like a really discouraging, intimidating speech, and then the premise, they twist the premise and give us the reverse of that, and in the climax, it's Charlie is in the same scenario.
Just have fun out there.
Right. Where
Yeah.
he's the kid and Gordon is now the coach, and so that's a premise pretzel. It's taking the same idea and twisting it and giving it new exploration. And this was a term that I learned from Jamie too, so I've been using it all the time now.
I also feel like that's kind of the theme of the movie for me. It's just have fun out there.
Just have fun out there.
Yeah, like that's,
It's
kind of what Mighty Ducks is for me. Yeah.
And then the nightmare fuel. So I talked about this a little bit in the Indiana Jones. So there's that Joseph Campbell quote: "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." And I'll give you a line from the movie that perfectly encapsulates where I'm going with this. The limo driver says, "The rink's got to be around here somewhere when they're looking for the kids for the first time." And Gordon says, "Just look for a sign that says personal hell." Because your job as a writer is to create as many people, places, things, and scenarios that put your character through their personal hell. And so this movie is Gordon Bombay's worst nightmare come to reality. And why I like pointing out this technique, nightmare fuel, is because your mind instantly goes to horror, right? Like you say, nightmare fuel. Well, it's got to be horror. Well, almost all comedies are nightmare fuel for your lead character. Like in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Steve Martin's inner problem is he fears emotional connection and vulnerability, and the story is constantly throwing him into situations where he has to make emotional connections with other humans. It is Steve Martin's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is Steve Martin's character's worst nightmare. And it's a great way to come up with ideas, is to ask yourself, get your character to ask, "I'll do anything you need me to do to achieve the goal, except face my fears in order to achieve the goal." And what are facing those fears? If you figure that out, then you can come up with a bunch of different scenarios. Gordon Bomb. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, so Gordon Bombay's nightmare fuel is literally not just being in charge of the kids, but also losing. He's with losers. He is now a loser, and he has to learn what losing feels like and means, and that it's not really the worst thing in the world. It's right.
Exactly.
That's his nightmare.
Exactly. He's a guy who is obsessed with winning.
Right.
And you surround him with people who up to that point are incapable of winning. And you put him back in face to face with his old coach who wounded him. You put him back face to face with all his losses. You put him back reliving in the actual locations all the places that he was traumatized, and then that's how he grows.
And in this movie, to add an extra layer, they even note that his memory of missing that goal is tied to his father's death, so it's not just the nightmare fuel of his failure. It's like the sadness of his life.
And he even says it.
Yeah.
He I actually wrote that because we're going to get into the shard of glass, but he says, "That was the worst time of my life. Yeah. My dad died that same year." And Han says the two are not related. And Gordon says, "Well, it feels like they are." So, yeah. So it's something I use a lot when brainstorming a concept. I figure out what my character's inner fear is and their outer fears. And then I come up with as many people, places, and things and scenarios that will just throw those fears in their faces. And that's how you get a character to grow. So yeah,
agree.
Nightmare fuel.
Yeah,
and touching base with that, heroes, character is really, I think, the key to making these sports movies work. And again, fix my father's problem that football's not interesting as a movie. You can watch football on Sunday, but I think that's the key is giving us a Rocky or giving us a good coach or something like that.
Yeah.
And the one thing I was going to say, I was trying to think, I prefer, especially in the team sport movies, generally when it is a coach, movies about coaches where they're the lead characters. And I was trying to think of the ones, because Major League, I guess,
Major League is more about Tom Berenger's character. He's the catcher.
It is.
It's about the catcher, right?
And a lot of times in baseball, you will get catcher stories like Bull Durham, for example.
Yeah.
Because they're almost like coaches.
Yeah.
They have a certain point of view in the game. Like football, you might get a quarterback. I think basketball and hockey in particular, maybe soccer too,
is a quarterback.
Yeah. I think basketball, hockey, they're trickier. I mean, you can do a point guard or something, but there's such, even the positions aren't delineated as like one is the kind of coach on the field as much. You could have a point guard and things like that. So I find that those movies typically are more about the coaches, like Hoosiers, I think of, and some of the other ones, Bad News Bears.
So you think the choice of sport is
League of Their Own
going to dictate League of Their Own as catcher?
League of Their Own is the catcher.
Gina Davis, and the pitcher.
I would say Tom Hanks has some sense. There's some central in him too.
Yeah.
So Jamie, do you think the choice of sport is sort of
it does
dictates the POV?
Yeah, it definitely does. And there's of course exceptions to all these rules.
Yeah,
but I was just thinking like, what works and what sort of doesn't work as well. I mean, anything you could make work.
In this movie, it's definitely Gordon. It's about Gordon. Like he is. I wouldn't say the kids are Charlie. Maybe kind of.
Yeah, Charlie has a little bit more. He's like the feature. He's like the featured duck for sure.
Right. Yeah. But it's Gordon's story.
So, like if you think of a movie like Slapshot or something, Paul Newman's almost like a player coach. It's usually like the old player that's almost like a coach.
A team leader, you could say, just
the team leader. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's things like that too.
The guy who's seen it all.
The guy who's seen it all.
Half man, I guess, really, right?
Yeah,
kind of the half man.
There's definitely half. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So that also. Oh, go ahead, Jamie. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think I was about to say what you were going to say.
No, go for it then.
Yeah, it kind of rolls into the hero's wants and needs, and in this case, our Emilio, who should have been Tom Cruise.
Come on.
Yeah. What? By the way, I heard Charlie was going to be Jake Gyllenhaal. Was the other one?
It could have been Jake Gyllenhaal or Leonardo DiCaprio.
That's the other one, Leonardo. That's amazing.
So weird.
I actually prefer being all the smaller grade, the B grade names in this movie.
Yeah, man.
After all these years, I'm happy that it's not.
Yeah,
Leo and
it would change the feel of it.
It would change the feel of it for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, nobody knew Leo back then, though.
Yeah,
he would have just
that's
been
true.
Some kid. So
but I'm saying, I mean, like looking back now, I just like it better the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy who played Charlie, what's his name, Joshua Jackson, he would have been in Titanic in that world.
Well, Dawson's Creek was pretty big, right?
Dude,
he was Dawson's Creek gig, yeah.
Fringe.
Yeah, The Affair was. He was in The Affair recently. That's what I watched.
He's had a great career. But you were talking about wants and needs, Jamie.
Wants and needs. So our lead character then is want, need, and shard of glass. The interesting thing about his want, I think in most movies like this, like you'd say the want was to get back to work or something like that. Mm-hmm. But because of what we said, where he almost arcs before the end of Act One, where he like has this new trajectory, his want is actually to get the team winning, to make the playoffs and stuff like that. And it happens relatively early.
Yeah, it's like 45 minutes. It shifts to a new one, kind of, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's it's very interesting and different in that way.
Like you could see another movie where you tie the want to if you want your job back, you have to win the championship or something like that.
They could have gone that route.
I know I keep bringing this up, but also you could also say he wants to impress his fathers, and in the beginning he's still trying. He's been trying to impress Coach Riley for his entire life, and then Hans kind of reminds him of what his original father and what his new father Hans wants.
Yeah.
And now he wants to impress Hans. He doesn't want to see that look on Hans' face ever again, where he's like, "You're so busy screaming at the kids." He doesn't want to see that ever again. That's a want, right?
Yeah,
he wants
I like Hans. That. Yes, that's good.
He wants the approval of Hans.
That's good. Yeah. That's definitely trackable.
And then his need is, I think it's sort of, there's a few different things they're playing around with. Like he needs to understand winning isn't everything. Let's just have fun out there and those kind of things. What need is usually the lesson they need to learn. So the want is that external goal, the thing you usually see in the log line, that external goal. So he wants to, win or whatever, win the championship.
Get the kids to win, yeah.
Yeah. He needs to realize that the team and the fun of it and the road in the Golden Fleece sense, the road is more important than the prize.
Than the destination. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Sportsmanship, like play fair, have fun. It's all about about having fun and
interestingly enough, my two favorite sports movies, they have similar lessons, but in the end, the teams lose. So Rocky loses, but gets respect. These are spoilers. I don't know.
Bad News spoiling Rocky, for God's sake.
Bad News Bears has like the greatest ending because they lose and they get like a trophy and they throw the trophy across and it's like F you guys. they don't care. They're just like we're the champs kind of thing.
Well, they won spiritually.
They won spiritually.
That's what matters.
There's this great ending. This one, because it's Disney, they kind of have to give them. Not only do they have to have them have the lesson, they have to give them the win. And they have to have the hero go on to get a minor league contract, even though he probably hasn't played in 30 years since he was like 10.
Well, I think that was obviously setting up. They saw potential before it even was released, obviously.
Yeah.
Because that ending, the bus ending, I was like, oh.
Remember,
really
we'll be back next year. Yeah.
It's coming back, right? Yeah.
But anyway, that's the need is there that they have. And then. There's this thing called the shard of glass in Save the Cat, and it goes by different terms and other things. So shard of glass is usually the origin story behind their flaw. It's like whatever their flaw is, the way they see the world, what's the origin story? And in this case, it's kind of like you mentioned it. It's kind of that double shard of glass, where on one hand, their father died, and that was somehow tied to the miss, like almost like the only thing he had after that was hockey and the evil father.
Right.
Yeah.
And he failed.
And he even references him in that speech in, make your dad proud. He's not here. Right. I wish he could be, but make your dad proud. So he makes him feel like he failed his dead dad too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like we mentioned, that's when the true arc happens, is when they're able to remove that shard of glass, where that origin story is no longer something that's like jammed in their psyche,
holding them back. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want to kind of figure out a character arc, figure out the moment where that goes away, where they give up on that negative thinking.
That would be when he tells him, I can't believe I spent all those years carrying what you thought, right?
Yeah. It's very specific and easy to see.
Yeah. And usually in kids' movies, Disney movies, these things are pretty specific and easy to find.
Yeah.
They're usually very on the nose.
Yeah.
If you get into an independent Sundance movie, it might be a little trickier.
Right. Mighty Ducks ain't an art house movie.
Well, it was. They tried.
You're right.
They tried. It was going to be, but then
who knows? Maybe the show will have some really big swings.
We need the Zack Snyder version of the Mighty Ducks, like the dark, grim.
At least the Brill cut. Where are we on Unconventional Hero?
No, we're still on.
I'm losing timeline.
We're on Comic Obsessions now.
Yeah, let's do that.
Jamie tied in team creation to this. You can bounce off some of, because I didn't track many, but I thought, like you just said, Jamie, Disney movies tend to be really good teaching pieces, because the stuff that Disney movies does, it's like really clear and sometimes on the nose. And if you're trying to learn comic obsession, so if you haven't heard this before, we've talked about this in previous episodes. And this tracks not only in comedies, but we found a comic obsession in Midsommar. It doesn't matter the genre.
It's beyond genre.
Since we've been pointing this out, it's pretty consistent in movies. So I went to a Robert McKee seminar, love him or hate him. I love him, especially in adaptation. But you, my friend, don't know Jack about life. But what Robert McKee poses, and he didn't create this idea. He just put a name to it and gave an explanation of how to use it as a tool. Is that the way to create comedy in a character is to figure out what it is that they're blindly obsessed with, and what we mean by blindly obsessed with is to the character it's a normal behavior. And to us, it's neurotic. So sometimes they're aware of it, but sometimes they're completely unaware of it. So in this, I found I actually think Gordon in the first act, before he has his first act arc, Gordon's obsession with winning is like where a lot of the comedy in his character draws. Right? He's gloating about being 30-0 and like he's got a just win license plate, right? Like it's all of the little jokes about Gordon are about his obsession with winning.
Goldberg, the way he treats the judge and the cops and all that stuff.
Yeah.
He's so fucking cocky. And that's all about his obsession with winning. And then I don't know if you guys agree with me here, but I think Goldberg stops being funny once he stops being afraid of the puck.
Oh yeah. He doesn't really get screen time after that.
Yeah, because it's like, go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, well, no, I was going to say, so these are also related to kind of mini arcs, which I also mentioned.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
A lot of times when you have a team, each character gets one little mini arc, and it's literally the type of thing where they have a problem, like I'm scared of the puck, it gets fixed, and that's it.
And that's it.
It's not a big journey usually, because you don't have enough time to do big journeys with 10 different players or something like that. So
and that also,
and
that also, I had meant to say, to bring it up when I talked about the nightmare fuel. You can do the same thing with supporting characters, right? Like that's when they tie Goldberg to the goalpost. That is his nightmare fuel, and it's fucking funny.
Yeah.
And Averman's got his Rob Schneider stick, which it's funny, it doesn't track as Rob Schneider stick when you watch it now, but it really was.
It really was
SNL
him doing. Yes, that's
like people watching it now who had never saw that would probably be like.
Interestingly, written by a guy who would go on to write movies starring Rob Schneider.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I don't know. Did you guys notice any other comic obsessions besides those? I'm sure there's more. I just didn't see them.
There's not much meat on the kids' bones here. I think rewatching it now for this show, because I've never watched Mighty Ducks with a curious eye,
an analytical mind.
Yeah, it's just Mighty Ducks. I don't watch it with a curious eye, but there is not much like Goldberg. Like you said, Goldberg, and I mean, Charlie has an arc kind of.
Oh yeah,
but the kids, they're really not that meaty. It's really just winning favor with them, and that's about it. It's there. I mean, you could say that Jesse and the really short kid, I forget his name, the one who wears like the leather jacket, like they're kind of the voice of the conscience of the team.
Yeah.
But I don't think they have a specific blind obsession.
There's some like classist things. Like,
there is that.
They don't like the rich kid, and I think they do. And I think they arc a little bit with Banks in that regard.
I was gonna bring up Jamie. You've said this before, and we always forget the third one. You said. And I agree with it. You've said many times that all character arcs at their most character arcs at their core can be broken down into two things: learns to gain confidence or learns to work as a team.
Right.
And that's sort of like this whole movie. It's like all the characters are both of that, right?
Yeah.
Like you just said with Banks and Jesse. Like that's them, like needs to work as a team, and that's the big reversal in the end. Like, hey, go give the Hawks hell, and Jesse says, "Okay, cake eater." Like, and then all the other kids, their little mini arcs are just like different versions of learns to have confidence. Like Charlie can't score when he's the 1-on-1. He's afraid to be the one with the puck when the game's on the line, and he scores the penalty. Like Goldberg's a goalie. He's afraid of the puck. We talked about that. Fulton's afraid to play because he can't skate, so they teach him how to skate. So it's all these kids. It's basically like you said, Jamie, before. Like it's either learns to have confidence or learns to work as a team, and like it's all sort of an exploration of that.
So you're actually you're doing the one I added. It's It's learns to be confident or learns to care more.
Ah.
So the one I always forget is the team one, and you're adding that.
Oh, okay.
The team one really plays here, though. I mean,
the team one is the one I added
Okay.
because I think when we did The Incredibles way back when, and
Another Disney.
It's like,
Yeah.
I was like, and it's a version of learns to care more. Really, it's a riff off of it, but you see it so often as like, we're better together than apart.
Yeah.
But we, like in The Incredibles, they do care about each other, and they care about each other a lot, but they think they work better in isolation sometimes. So, and I think in this case, the team one actually works as well.
Yeah, it works really well. Okay, so that's the third.
And I think the cares more works in this one too. There's a lot of caring more.
Well, you can even argue that's for Gordon too, right?
For Gordon, for the kids, because when you meet them, like the kids aren't giving their all. They're, Goldberg goes to the side, just shoot in when all the kids are attacking him.
I'm kind of surprised more kids didn't have the comic obsessions that when I watching it like this, I was like, wow, it's only like 2 of them. I was like, I would have thought there'd be more.
But it still works.
It still it totally works. It's not like I think that would make it even more overstuffed if we spent more time on that.
But it's a good note, Jamie, because that's one of the things, I was talking earlier about me reading these amateur sports scripts, and a lot of those, one of the ingredients that's missing is highlighting the players, the little side players, and giving them their own little mini problems, these fears. And like you said, it's real easy, right? Goldberg's afraid of the puck. Now he's not. That's all you need.
What I want to give the movie, and this is a good time to say it, what I want to give the movie props for is that it would be kind of hackish and expected if Banks coming onto the team and his skill made someone else hate him because they were the top dog. But but the one thing this movie doesn't do is have a top dog on the team.
Right. Because there is no top dog.
Yeah, right. Literally Gordon knows that, and he gets his own top dog legally. He's a lawyer, and he uses the premise.
He uses his premise
to get to get the kid.
How does a lawyer get the star player? He manipulates the system.
Right. It's all there in the premise.
It's funny because that's the one thing I have to give this movie kudos for. I make fun of goofy things like the article hanging on, or even the team being in the newspaper, or there's some silly stuff like that. But the one thing I do give this thing props for, it shows how the team could go from really bad to better. It has this incremental way that it could get better. So first they get the kid that's can fire 100 miles an hour, Second, they teach the team to be better, but still that wouldn't be enough, because they still kind of stink.
They get pro skaters, kids, or
they get better uniforms and stuff like that. I mean, because you get better equipment, that's the thing, you start feeling more confident. They poach a kid from the best team. These are all things that it's not just one thing, or it's not just because I gave a speech, they're suddenly better. They incrementally learn. The team actually incrementally gets better, that you kind of buy in that by the end of the movie, maybe they can make a play, because it's a different makeup of a team.
Yes.
And a different mindset by the end than it was in the beginning. So the team has an arc that you can legitimately track.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah, man. I totally agree. Where are we? Classrooms.
We back up one. The villain.
Oh, unconventional hero versus villain approach. Right.
You're almost back on the track, Jamie.
I
mean, Bob.
I'm totally off today. Apologize to the listeners.
So the thing that stuck out most to me, watching this movie back, and I haven't seen this movie in 20 plus years.
Oh, really? Okay.
But before that, I had the VHS and I wore it out. I was amazed that I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but I can remember what Gordon Bombay says to Charlie, even though I haven't watched it.
I bet you remember that beautiful score. One thing I know we're a script podcast, but the score is just
Pavlovian response to the score.
Score is so good, man.
The score is good.
So typically, I think this movie has it's really instructive because it has a really unconventional approach to the villain. the hero versus villain that we've talked about so many times in this podcast. So like typically the villain is a circus mirror of the hero, but they're not there yet. Like they're total opposites, right? Like typically what we see time and time again, like Indy versus Belloc. If Indy makes all the wrong choices, he's Belloc. We just talked about that one. Luke versus Vader. If Luke makes all the wrong choices, he will become Vader. He's not Vader now, but he will become Vader.
Correct.
For instance, in a comedy, in Bridesmaids, Annie, if Annie makes all the wrong choices, which she does over the course of the story, she will become Helen. She'll be just as bad as what Helen's doing. And eventually she gets there and then goes back to who she was from the beginning. In this movie, when we meet Gordon, he's actually like an escalated worse version of the coach. Like when we meet him,
he's
manipulating the legal system. He's manipulating judges. He's cheating the judicial system.
Yeah, it's not just Pee Wee hockey that doesn't really affect the world.
He's gone a step above Coach Riley. Like Coach Riley is fucking low level slime compared to who Gordon is when we meet him. And then he realizes as the story unfolds that he has become the villain and works to undo all of that damage that the villain did to him to become the hero. So it's really interesting that it works, that yet he still feels like our typical standard Disney hero, you know? Like I think that's like really cool that it's completely different than how you typically see. He starts out like as the villain, and I think
the movie also is like, it's more specific. It's like, yes, everything you just said about the legal system, but also Gordon, you could argue Gordon as a hockey coach realizes if he keeps doing this, he becomes the evil hockey coach that he hates.
Too, as well.
You know what I mean? Like
yes.
the specificity of, like, I'll just become Coach Riley if I keep going. Right. It's not about who he is in real life.
But they have that great moment when he gets there and he's trying to mimic him. Like
right.
he still loves this guy, right? He still reveres this guy. He's doing the same thing. Win. And he's like replaying as the guy's saying, it's not worth winning if you can't win big. He's like mouthing the words along with him. And when he's first doing it, he's doing it sort of out of pride and like camaraderie, and then he like realizes that all that's wrong. And I just thought that was a really cool way to like craft your hero versus villain, to actually start the hero as the villain, or even worse, really. Yeah, it's different.
It's another thing with it just tells me character really changes things around. But in the Bad News Bears, which is it. And honestly, I don't see these two very much alike when I watch them. You know, they do have the same trappings and the same premise.
Right.
But in the Bad News Bears, Buttermaker is like a former minor league coach. And he actually, in the end, gets almost evil and competitive himself. Like, he really wants to win, you know? And he sees the villain coach, who's kind of, you know, the ordinary dad guy, like slap his son, I think, is what happens.
Oh, wow.
That's what kind of clicks. That's what kind of clicks Buttermaker into place. Like, you know, he's almost like Buttermaker's almost the villain in some ways. Like he's the one that is obsessed. But when he sees that, he kind of realizes that winning isn't everything, and he kind of backs off. But it's just so different because in this movie, you do have that counterpart, that father-son, evil father-son dynamic. And that, to me, flavors the movie in such a different way. That there's not that, like, I think of the dynamic in Bad News Bears as being the Buttermaker and I can't think of the girl, Wurlitzer, I think is her name. And that's a girl that's almost like a surrogate daughter to him.
Yeah.
You know, that becomes the pitcher. And that becomes the relationship story really in that movie in some ways, that of the things he's trying to overcome. But anyway, it just goes to show me that if you can change the characters in this fundamentally and really orchestrate it, as well as the premise paint, you'll get a totally different story with all different kinds of treats and lessons learned and all that fun stuff. Yes.
Totally agree.
Now we're on the classroom, Bob.
Now I was going to say, now we're where it caught out to me going too far ahead. Ducksworth go-to classroom.
Did you guys notice this when you were watching it?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about, so I want to hear it.
I think
ahead,
I know
Bob.
what you're talking. No, I might think of the wrong thing.
Okay,
so you say it first, and then I'll decide if I'm dumb.
So we haven't. we've been, we're 60 movies into breaking down how a story is constructed.
Jimmy, move the mic
And
a little closer to your face.
we're 60 movies into breaking down how movies are constructed, and we've noticed this thing that happens like movie after movie that Jamie has deemed go to the classroom scenes, where people are sitting in a classroom and like somebody just like teaches them the theme. It's up on the chalkboard, or somebody just says it overtly. And a lot of times in movies, you'll be surprised to find that like even in these indie dramas, there's a scene where someone just like outright says the theme to the character, the lesson that they need to learn. We talked about this in the Midsommar episode. We talked about it in Toy Story 4 recently. Another Disney movie. These Disney movies, they're good teaching examples. In this one, it's when Ducksworth is talking to Gordon, it's like very, very easy to see that this is like the classroom scene where he's teaching him the lesson. And he says, there's two of them. He says, "We score, we don't spike. Next time a little restraint might be in order, Gordon." So that's the sportsmanship aspect of the lesson that Gordon needs to learn. And then he says, "You need a break. You're too wrapped up in your work." And Gordon says, "My work is my life." And he's like, "Exactly. The community service will do you good. It'll teach you compassion, a sense of fair play, how to fit in, and hopefully you'll come back a better person." I mean, it doesn't get more on the nose.
Also, like, kind of kudos to this movie that Ducksworth sort of is a bad guy later.
I love that reversal.
It's really odd that he gets all of it from him, and then it's like, oh, because you would think a normal script would put it in Han's hands completely.
Right, and I think they do a good job of giving us a middle beat to that eventual reversal of him just being a complete slimeball. There's that scene where he goes to ask for sponsorship,
and he says no,
and he's like, he starts to respond in a way that's more slimeball-y and not more like wise man teaching. And I think that like paves the way for that reversal enough. Like he's like, my name on a jersey and our law firm looks good.
It actually makes you like realize that he really wanted Gordon to fix himself so he could eventually be better at his job, thus profiting him. It wasn't about Gordon's life.
Ulterior motives. Yeah. But that Ducksworth scene is a really good instructive way to like see a scene where the movie's theme is said out loud to the character, and then basically it sets the everything in motion, and all the other characters are sort of different versions of that, like trying to teach him a lesson. Like Charlie refuses to cheat, right? Like he'd rather lose fair than win with cheating. And Hans, like you said, Hans tells him, Riley wins, but he's a jerk and he cheats, and he's like not someone. He reminds him.
I think he said he's an idiot. I think
he's an idiot. Yeah,
he's an idiot. Yeah.
Right. So.
And really what this is, the reason that threw me off was when you go to the classroom. Like I was like, what? He didn't go to the classroom.
Oh, yeah.
That was later in the movie, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking of that scene in the classroom.
I'm sorry, I used the actual class. I'm sorry.
No worries. But so what this really is, in the Blake Snyder terms, the theme stated moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the Save the Cat books, Blake says, it's page 7. Just put it there. It's page 7. Yeah. It's somewhere in the setup, usually. It's somewhere in the first 12. Though I find theme, at least in my books, Save the Cat Writes for TV.
Available on Amazon.
Available on Amazon. I actually have my own theory on theme stated. I actually think it can float all different kinds of places in your thing. It usually is in the setup. And keep in mind that this was around the time Blake was probably writing Blank Check. I don't remember when Blank Check came out. And this is around page 7, I think, when he has this.
It's like 8 minutes.
So this is the Disney, if you're trying to do a true blue constructed Disney, this is what Blake was talking about. He knew it because he analyzed movies like this and wrote movies like this. And it was around page 7. But here's the key to it. The key to it is it's usually someone else calling your main character on their flaw.
Mm-hmm.
So they usually... And the reason it comes up on page 7, this is the organic. So again, I'm Mr. You could have it on page 20 if you want. You don't have to do it on 7. But the reason it usually comes up in the setup is because the setup is all about establishing how the flaw is screwing up your hero's life. So because of that, there's usually going to be somebody that says, you know what, if you weren't such a jerk, your life would be better.
Yeah.
That's going to happen organically if you're establishing the flaw in the first 12 pages.
Yeah.
It's just kind of normal.
And I agree with you, Jamie, and we've seen this movie after movie that we've broken down. Every character can be an expression of theme. Every scene can be an expression of theme. And it's like sort of this back and forth argument as the characters like trying to, wrestle with this flaw and this lesson that they need to learn. And like I said, like you're going to have your Riley smacking him in the face with the opposing theme. Like, it's not worth winning if you can't win big. And then you have the other side where like you have the dad coming in and being like, is this why I gave up my overtime pay to watch my kids cheat,
Right.
taking balls? And you just have this back and forth where the story throws situations and characters who are vocalizing to your hero, like, learn the lesson. And it isn't until they fully learn the lesson that they can grow and arc and like achieve the goal in the end.
Yeah.
So this is...
In a Disney movie like this, or in a movie like Blank Check, you're a little more on the nose about these things.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
If you're
okay.
if you're writing if you're writing Nomadland or something, you probably don't want to pop people out of the realism by because you have
Right.
like this spider sense tingles when the theme is in there. That's like,
Right.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So in those movies, maybe you're doing less, show, or you're doing more show don't tell. And in these movies, you do a little bit more telling. You make it really obvious. You want the kids to get it. You want them to be able to state it at the end.
Yeah, it's a kid's genre premise delivery, even just in the theme.
I mean, as a kid, I understood what the message was of this
absolutely
right. And
Yeah.
most cheeseburger movies in general, when we talk about the
easily
cheeseburger,
digestible. Yes.
Right.
yeah. So movies like Iron Man or something probably do have a theme stated.
Yes,
I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but they probably do. They probably do specifically say what the theme
I'm
is.
sure.
They probably hit it a few times. If you're doing something like some A24 horror movie that you don't want to break reality because it's more scary, maybe your theme is more something you really have to dig into and look into and figure out and suss it out.
Yeah, what's the classroom scene of Tree of Life? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But no, but I know what
the whole movie is the
movie is
classroom scene.
Right. No, but I'm totally agreeing with Jamie. I'm just saying, like, classroom scenes are for cheeseburger movies.
Yes.
Yeah,
for sure.
They just don't happen in art films. We kind of already talked about team creation and comic obsession and mini arcs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So training sequences or playing sequence?
Mm-hmm.
How about so writing montages essentially, right?
Yeah. And I think I kind of brought that up during the premise stuff. The key of those scenes are just make them very specific to your own story. Again, the slab of meat in Rocky, like that's very unique to Rocky. That's what he punches. Another movie, Rocky 3, was it Rocky 3 or was it Rocky 4? The robot and all that stuff. In
Rocky
the training
4 is
sequence.
the robot.
Okay, so things like that. You put like the rich training sequence in Rocky 3 because that's unique to that premise.
Right.
I use as a teaching example when I consult on the sports scripts because I run into a lot of problems with this area of the amateur screenwriting sports scripts is the training stuff.
Yep.
The Pachenko in the Cutting Edge is a great. It's probably like 92. I don't know off the top of my head, but same era. So, hey, even ice skating. But
also, hold on. Okay, keep talking.
Tracking the how the story shows them sucking and then learning, training, and then putting into the real time of the competition, and then sucking again, and then regrouping, and finally winning through all that training is a very instructive example. For me, like, I think when you asked this question about like how this movie handles training, I didn't think I was gonna, because in my memory it wasn't that awesome, of an example, but I think it does a pretty great job tracking, and I think these training sequences need 4 ingredients, right? Four things, and a lot of the scripts I consult on are missing 1 or 2 of these, which is you need your act 1 before training, where you see them losing,
right,
and see their lack of, so it's almost like, Jamie, to use like something you've talked about before, your before snapshot, right? Like, and then you need your first half where their first victory is just learning how to play. Right. So it's like and those are your sports genre fun and games. Like, and we saw that. I mean, this movie has an amazing sports genre fun and games sequence where they're learning just to play. Right. But then you also need your second half of Act 2 where they're implementing the training, and they're not like the best, but they're finally, they learn how to win like once. Right. And a lot of the scripts that I consult on don't have that. Like, we go from training to winning the big game. We don't go and see them sort of like learning how to pass correctly, learning how to communicate. Just scoring one single goal is the biggest fucking deal to this team. And that's really huge.
They tie in their first game,
and they're like
yes!
pouring Gatorade on Gordon Bombay just from that.
Right. That is a crucial, that second half of Act 2, when you're having in your sports movie your people who have been training, implementing that training before the big game.
And then the other, I'm sorry, Jimmy.
No, go ahead, Jamie.
The other big thing in a montage that you really need in a sports training montage is a Whitesnake song.
Yes.
I don't know.
Finally, the real script questions answered.
I don't know why I picked Whitesnake. Is there any sports montage with the Whitesnake? Here I go again. I don't know.
I'm sure if not season 4 Cobra Kai.
I just like.
Well, I mean, it's funny that Queen is not in this movie, but it's in like the credits, and it's in the trailer, but it's not in the movie. And I always associate that song with Mighty Ducks.
I think they say "We will quack you" for like 2 seconds.
I think the sequel plays off it way harder, and that's why
quack
it's associated.
you.
Yeah.
The really when I write these, like, one thing, this is purely a style thing, and for each their own. I hate when I have to write montage scenes. I just think on the page they're like so blah or skimmable. You gotta
see them.
You know,
they're visual.
Yeah. It really sucks to have bullets of things, on your page. I'm not saying don't write them, because people write them, obviously. But the one thing I'd say about the Mighty Ducks, I'm not sure that they have, maybe it does, a montage per se, as opposed to short scenes.
And that's why it's impactful, because we see an extended version of these things. And I like that it's not montage. The montages are really like at the mall.
Yeah.
And like not the training.
It doesn't have that 80s montage flair to it. But it was 92. Maybe they were trying to actively not do that.
And the mall is kind of its own scene as part of the sequence.
Training.
But this is just a style thing. You could certainly do training montages or montages in general. My style, I hate whenever I end up with a montage. I'm always like, is there a way I can turn this into 1 or 2 scenes and just imply the rest? Just because they read better. It's purely a style thing.
Well,
there's no conflict in a montage.
Do you still like montages in movies? You just don't like writing them, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't diss necessarily. It's all execution based. Like, there's probably some montages where I'm like, okay, they didn't do anything interesting here. Like, I do kind of hate the ones that are just like, let's see a guy punching a punching bag. You know what I mean? Like what's the story to that? Like, there's some montages that bore me.
More than physical.
There should be something that gives me like a setup payoff or a twist or a laugh or something. And I find a lot of them.
Rocky's montage.
Yeah, I find a lot of them are just music, and it's like a little music video of somebody doing stuff. But the Rocky one's great, where he runs up the steps and and things like that. I mean, that's a classic. So I don't know. It's execution based for me. I can't say I hate them. I can't say I love them. I just
Team
on the page, Team America's great. Yeah, but it's a send up of one.
Yeah,
too.
but it also in that parody of montages, there's actual story happening in that.
There's
montage.
Story happening. Yeah, and that's what I like to see, is the story happening. It's just one of these things where a montage in the movie has music and it's edited nice and has drone shots and it's running through a crowded street or whatever. And on a page it says drone shot of a person running.
Well,
Man punches slabs of meat. It's like it's not that fun to read.
That's
Well, you
where
also run
filmmaking comes in, Jamie.
Yeah,
It
for
really
sure.
is. Yeah.
Well, you also run the risk, which we've talked about many times, of taking all the trailer moments and like diminishing them to like this page of things and thinking you've checked that box. And that's all you need is a montage. And if you rely on that and you don't expand it and give us like multiple scenes of these things, of these sports genre fun and games, I mean, it's got multiple scenes.
As somebody who teaches Save the Cat, a lot of people, when they first learn Save the Cat, when they first attempt it, they get to that fun and game section and they write a one-page montage and they think they're done.
That's it.
They're like, oh, I did the fun and games. There's my montage.
Nah.
Next.
No, fun and games should be woven throughout.
I mean,
right?
we've talked about like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, not a sports movie, but like it's like one long thing because the premise delivery is so strong of fun and games. And this movie's a lot like that. I mean, this movie is fucking delightful like for most of its runtime because it's like the premise delivery is so strong.
Right.
It almost feels like fun and games throughout like the entire movie. But I like that you posed the question about like writing these training sequences because I think you could easily go wrong with this and like having the before training where they losing, showing them training, and then showing them just like learning how to win once. Like you said, they tied their first game and it was a big fucking deal. And then getting us to the big act 3 where they're like a transformed team unit who knows how to play. That's why it feels so earned because we've got all 4 of those things. And often I'm reading sports scripts where 2 of those things are missing. Like we get the before and we get the after and we get no training, or we get the training and no first win, like, so, or we like, dude, I can't tell you the number of scripts that skip past the big championship game and we just like they're holding the trophy.
What?
Like this, dude, it happens so often. I cannot tell you the number of sports scripts. I've various different types of sports, not just baseball. Maybe they think a budget,
like they don't want to like.
No, because they misunderstand that it's about the journey, not the destination, right?
Right.
And so they skip past that crucial final leg of the mile that you're running with your characters and just get to like running through the.
I was almost going to say, like, I could almost see a movie with Rocky, like ding, 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 and blackout. We don't know who wins or something like that.
Yeah,
I could see that version of it in some ways where it really is about the journey.
It's all in your head.
Could you argue The Wrestler? If you guys remember The Wrestler, that kind of does
that's
that?
That's a good example.
Somewhat.
It doesn't really skip over it, but it kind of gets you to that point.
And then that's specific to that premise, though. That's more
it very much is.
Very
he's basically committing suicide right there. So
I don't even know that that's a Golden Fleece movie necessarily.
Exactly.
It's not like he's earning.
No, it's a sports movie. That's what I thought of it. That's all.
I was searching. I was searching for his discussions on sports. I had an old issue of Creative Screenwriting magazine where Darren Aronofsky is talking about the process of working with the writer for The Wrestler, and there was so many good talking points I remember, but I don't remember them specifically enough to preach to them. But he was talking about how Rudy is his favorite movie, but he would never make a movie like that. So like The Wrestler is his sports movie, the Darren Aronofsky flavor sports movie, right? So no, I'm talking about where I'm consulting on mainstream Mighty Ducks style sports movies where we're building to the big game and then we skip past the big game to the trophy in hand. And it's
let's talk about the big game.
Okay, talk about
finale, right?
The finale.
The finale.
You usually talk about the 5-point finale in movies, Jamie, right? You seem to always bring that up.
Yep. And this one is a tricky one to evaluate. Like I was talking to Jimmy a little bit about this beforehand, and again, it has that problem of having too many things. I think, which isn't a problem at all. That's a benefit. It's like there's a lot of ways I could slice this movie. So the first thing I noticed was the finale. Oh, I almost was tempted to say it probably you could break it down into a Save the Cat cheat sheet. It probably has like a catalyst break into setup. But I noticed it had that good news, bad news technique all over. And whenever you end up in a fun and games or a finale, those big sections, those 20, 30-page sections, one way to break them up is to kind of good news, bad news it, to try to figure it out. But just looking at it super quick, it was like the Hawks were leading, I think, 3-0. And then I think Emilio calls them over and says, "Let's fly." Yeah. And they get their first score, And then right after they get the first score, I think they're like, "Sweep the leg," or whatever. And then leg gets swept. So that's obviously bad news.
They take Banks out, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. When they knock Banks out, which is another one of those scenes that it probably doesn't age well, like, because now with concussions and stuff, like that's a big deal. Like I probably couldn't write that into my script now, where it's like, just wheel him off. He's knocked out.
Right.
You play little cuckoo music or whatever, and the birds flying or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they get another score. They give one up. They do the figure skating trick. But then they push over the girl. Then the enforcer their big enforcer guy attacks. But then he's thrown out of the game. So then they do the flying V. Yay, and then the Hawks, I think, put on the pressure. They almost get a score, but the Ducks steal, and then they miss, and they don't win. And then the penalty to save the game. It just goes back and forth like that.
The penalty is the reflection of his memories, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just one up and down after another. It's like one good news, one bad news after another. So you can see that construction in it. But another way we talk about is the 5-point finale. And just to give you the heads up on the 5-point finale, here are the 5 points. It's funny too, because I wrote these wrong in my book. And the editor
amazing.
The editor found like half of them, but didn't find the other half. So you have a first edition, there's like an inconsistency because there's the way I always teach it and the way Save the Cat officially did it at some time. So and now I almost want to look it up to see what the real one is because I can't remember.
I got them, but you go ahead.
Okay. So these are the way I do it. This is the way I call them. Gathered, they're basically, I use different labels, but they're the same. So gather the team as point one. The second one is execution of the plan. The third one is high tower surprise. The fourth one is dig down deep. And the fifth one is execution of the new plan. And Jimmy, you said you actually broke these.
I broke them down. Okay. Yeah. And they track and then they don't. So
for Mighty Ducks, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. So we've, for anyone listening for the first time, we've noticed that in some of our favorite movies, this tracks like 100%, and it's like so easy and so clean, and it does the 5-point finale to a T. And then in others, it doesn't do it at all. Like Ninja Turtles, like there's only like 2 points of this 5-point.
Right.
And
I think one point that should be made, like these kind of tools, and this is a particular Save the Cat tool, they're better for inspiration and pulling story out of you.
Exactly.
And they're really not meant for analysis.
Absolutely.
They're really meant like, hey, what do I do for my finale? I'm sitting here staring at the white page. Oh, let me break out this little tool and figure out what it is. It's not really meant to.
I always like what you say,
labeled.
Jamie. You always say they're guidelines, they're not rules.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a great way to like get from A to Z, right? Like, okay, how do I get from the beginning of my climax to the end of my climax, this little chunk of my film, and make it exciting.
Right.
So this 5-point finale. So this one's instructive in that it doesn't follow it to a T. So gathering the team, one side of the argument I would say is the whole fucking movie is gathering the team.
Right, yeah.
Like the first point of the 5-point finale is the rest of the movie for me.
Like they're adding kids to the team far in, like way past the halfway point.
Yeah, so, all the way to the middle. We're gathering the team. But I guess you could argue, Jamie, it's the pep talk at the start of the game where he says, "Let's get fired up," and they do the quack, 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 go Ducks. That's the gathering of the team.
Sports movies, it's usually like a speech or something.
Right.
Though sometimes it's sometimes the Dig Down Deep has a big halftime speech, so they don't want to put the speech up front necessarily.
Gotcha. Like Miracle, okay.
Yeah, but it's usually a locker room. They don't do a locker room moment here. They do a Star Spangled Banner scene where they're all there. I think that kind of qualifies.
Okay, cool. Storming, executing the plan / storming the castle, depending on the premise. I just wrote, it's kind of a general. The Ducks face off against the Hawks. They're a transformed team because the first time we saw them, they were facing the Hawks and they lost 17-0. So we see this small period of the first part of the game where they're holding their own, right? The score is staying close. And that in itself is really executing the plan, right? Just to stay in the game against this team that absolutely obliterated them the first time we saw them.
But by the way, Save the Cat Rights for TV tidbit. I think that's the one I messed up. I always call it Storm the Castle. And I think in the original Blake book, it's called Executing the Plan.
How about that?
Yeah. So wait, there's two editions of your book which say the separate ones, say the different.
Yeah, because there's the second edition of my book. So most people will get the first printing because it's got to sell several thousand copies before you get to the second. But the second edition has a couple minor like consistency things and stuff like that we found when we did the audiobook because it was like, wait a minute, what is that?
That's so great. Nice. I love that, Jamie.
Yes.
We're all human, right? We're only human.
Yeah. But I always call it Storming the Castle.
Yeah.
Apparently,
And
I don't know where I got that, to be honest.
I kind of like it better.
And honestly, maybe you got it from me because I use it all the time.
I've always used it.
Maybe you just love Princess Bride.
Yeah. And if it's a siege movie, it's defending the castle. It's really premise specific.
Yeah, storming the castle just means doing the thing,
executing the plan.
Executing the plan.
Okay, the Hightower surprise is, but Coach Riley, like you said, has his bullies attack Adam and they injure him, and the Ducks' best player is out of the game. That's the big Hightower surprise. And Bob, like you said, the dig down deep is when Gordon finally confronts Coach Riley.
Right.
He removes that shard, that wound, and he says, "To think I wasted all those years worrying about what you thought. You're going down.
Now it's just about winning."
It's just about winning and having fun, and then executing the new plan. So, Jamie, I found 4 plans back to back to back to back to back.
Right.
But it starts with, like you said, Bob, Gordon saying, "It's time to play smart hockey and let's have fun." And then they execute. They use the power play advantage to get Fulton a clear shot, and he scores. They use Tammy and Tommy's twirling figure skating shot, and she scores. They use the flying V, and Jesse scores. And then Gordon uses encouraging words instead of intimidating ones to coach Charlie. And Charlie uses the triple D Gordon taught him and scores the penalty shot, and they win the championship. So it's 4 executions of new plans in the end. A little bit different than the 5-point finale, but it works.
Is the triple D, is that a secret weapon? I can't remember.
So Bob, Jamie and I were talking about this outside of before we started. Yeah. Dude, like none of these big iconic moves are set up.
No,
normally
they're not.
Normally they'd be the thing that shows up on page 30. Like
it's weird because it's almost like it's funny because I associate Mighty Ducks with the knuckle puck, which is from 2.
Yeah,
and that is completely 100% set up.
Oh yeah,
and I noticed in this, I was like, they don't really tell you what the hell the triple deke is.
Yeah, or the flying V.
Or the flying V. Yeah,
it has to be an editing thing. I think it's an editing thing. It seems to me that has to have been in the script.
They might have shot the practice and then they're like, we don't need it.
Yeah, the flying V to me felt like the crane technique almost, right?
Yeah,
it's like let's do the flying V, the duck thing, And,
except without any of Miyagi on the beach with Daniel.
Except no setup.
How to do it. Right. Yeah. So, and I think it works because it's such incredible premise delivery. Like it's such a pure encapsulation of the movie.
Also, there's a visual with him saying how ducks fly together and how they fly. We know you should know how ducks fly.
Right.
So you don't need. Maybe they edited
You
it out.
get it? Yeah.
Honestly, when I watched it for the first time.
Right.
When I first watched it, I was like, I just thought it was a hockey thing because I don't know hockey that well. I was like, maybe that's a thing. And then I started to think about it like in the secret weapon context. I was like, wait a minute. Oh, they're talking about duck formation, and is that?
Yeah.
And then I actually just thought I missed the setup because it felt so obviously a secret weapon kind of setup payoff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And then the same with the is it the triple deke? Is that what it is?
Triple deke, and that's I'm fine with the flying V. The triple deke, it does feel like it's missing something because
it feels like some psychological thing, you know.
What Charlie does on the ice, it doesn't even look unique. It just looks like he's. I don't know about hockey either, Jamie. So I'm like watching that scene. I'm like, what the hell is the triple D? Just pushing the puck toward the goal? Like,
we saw him do it when he was a kid. That's the move.
Yeah. That's the setup. That's the setup, Jamie.
And they I guess that's supposed to be enough, and we're supposed to go with the fact that maybe Gordon taught him off, because there is a single line that returns to it that's about 10 minutes earlier, and he's like, "You've been practicing that triple deke?" I don't know why he's whispering, but he totally is. You've been practicing that triple deke.
I guess it doesn't matter what is actually the triple deke is. The fact that it's what Gordon lost his original game with.
Mm-hmm.
And it was what Charlie has to do it. That's the setup and delivery. It doesn't matter what it is.
We feel it. You feel it.
Yeah.
But I think for me, because like I'm constantly giving notes, and like as a notes giver, I was like, "Ooh, man, this is like defies some shit I might say to somebody." Like if I see the flying V on page like 100, and I've never seen it before, I'd be like, "What the hell?" Like nobody's gonna go with this. But I think it's such perfect, pure premise delivery. Like how do you show like a hockey move that like shows the team is working together in the premise of Mighty Ducks, a fucking flying V? Like it's
but
perfect,
the setup, once again, you could argue, now assuming that they didn't shoot it and it was just a script, there is that sort of halfway speech he gives about what ducks mean when he's introducing the new name, and I feel that's like that's enough for us to get to flying V mentally.
Okay
it's loose but he does argue it with that point. They fly together, flying V, sure. And if anyone has looked up in the sky, they know. So,
the setup is our existence as humans.
Yes.
Strangely enough, to me, it was like if I saw a basketball movie and in Hoosiers, he said, "Okay, run the double pick and roll on the baseline." And I'd just be like, "Yeah, that's something they do in basketball."
Do that.
Yeah. Just go. It's fine. I just thought it was interesting. So like, next time I see it also set up, maybe I will be like, you know what? People won't care.
Even with a loose setup, it's one of the most iconic things from the movie that people still
absolutely
talk about. Flying V. I mean, like that's it. Yeah, it worked. So
yeah,
it still held.
It struck me. It was like, whoa! Like Jamie said, like where did I watched it again. And I was basically, like, no, I didn't miss the setup. There just wasn't.
There was no checkoff to this gun.
No, exactly. Exactly. But it still worked, and people still fucking love it. Me too. Me included.
Yeah. Flying V's a good scene.
Yeah.
But we don't. I guess if they just had it in the montage, we would have been like, all right. Like if they showed them how Gordon's telling them where to
tripping up.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah. But I can see how maybe that isn't that interesting in a montage of Gordon showing them how to skate in unison like that.
Yeah.
Visually speaking.
Yeah.
I think that's everything.
We covered a lot.
Covered everything. That's all you had to say about 5 Point, right, Jamie?
Yeah. The only other one thing I wanted to add was how weird it was that Charlie wanted to get his mother boyfriend. So it's strange.
It was a little aggressive.
The weirdest part was in the kiss in the end, Charlie's face, he's like, whoa!
How are you that surprised? Like, yeah.
I was like, this is a weird thing for a son to be thinking about his mom. I'm like, whoa, she's getting there's some French kissing going on. Whoa!
Also, this is probably the Disney thing. I like in this movie, I think if it wasn't Disney, we would have seen Gordon having a former relationship that was like horrible, or he had like a lower class of idea of what a relationship is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was no comparative to his new relationship versus what he used to do.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Like for him, it's almost like being in a relationship was part of the new him. That was actually like
because he was a workaholic.
Yeah, he's a workaholic that could never
married
love.
to his work.
Right.
Yeah,
It's a good point. Because usually in the setup you'd say show their homework and play.
Yeah,
I think in this story we pretty much just get work and play kind of thing.
because there is no home.
If you consider hockey play. But there's no home really. It's just that.
Yeah.
Even with the kids, we don't get too. I mean, I guess with Charlie's home,
that's it.
We get Charlie's home.
Yeah.
There's no other kids' homes that we see. You get to see Jesse's father.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the start, the extent of it.
And it's because there's so much to deal with all these stories and kids. And
they're jamming in a lot.
Yeah.
It's a really, really fast-moving, impactful setup, but it's still long, but it doesn't feel like it at all. Yeah.
That's what impressed me about it on first watch. Because honestly, I thought, oh, I know what this is. I'm not really going to like it. And I did know what it was. But I still liked it, and I think because it really is well executed.
Honestly, I'm happy you liked it, Jamie, because like
me too.
I was kind of walking into this. I was like, man, I know Jamie's gonna hate this movie or something like that. Not that you ever hate movies, but you know what I mean.
No, I was pretty impressed by it. Actually, it's like I mean, these little quibbles are more like probably editing things. Actually, they probably got there probably was a flying V, but they were probably like, we can't have the 3-hour Mighty Ducks movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the Twitter campaign takes hold, but
and this is a genre I write in, so it's a good one to watch, like what it was like in the 90s as compared to now.
This kind of feels really it's hard to argue this isn't completely in our show's wheelhouse.
Oh yeah, no, it totally is. Yeah.
But I think that's everything, right? I think we're at the end here. You guys have anything you want to plug again? Even though we did plug at the beginning. I know Jamie apparently has a book, I think, that we haven't plugged yet.
Save the cap rights for TV. It should be everywhere at this point. I think you can get it on iBook or you can get your Kindle. You can get the audio.
You read the audio book, right, Jamie?
I read the audio, so it'll be like this podcast for 8 straight hours.
But you won't have me and Jimmy interrupting. Finally,
no.
It'll just be the master.
Yeah, that's right. I finally got rid of the other two, and I'm able to just speak for 8 hours.
Yeah.
I have something to pitch, but I just wanted to thank you two for humoring me and doing this episode because I really
love the Mighty Ducks, so
blast.
this isn't a chore for me.
Honestly, legit, after I watched it, like I'm gonna watch the TV show now.
Hell yeah, that's awesome!
I almost turned it on this morning. I watched Invincible on Amazon instead, but I was thinking about it.
I think they're releasing it like they're doing the other shows now. It's
one episode at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll let them build up, and I like to watch.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it. I'm definitely gonna watch it because it's Mighty Ducks, man. I'm not gonna not watch a Mighty Ducks movie.
I don't know that I want to watch D2 and D3.
Yeah, man.
Though. I don't know if I want to do that, but I'll watch this show.
I don't think you
don't need to, but if you do, we'll only watch D2. Don't watch D3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
D2 has all like the really fun stuff, but like the reality jump is huge. Like the leap from
they become Team USA. You just have to go with that. But
it's fun. It's really fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But for anyone else listening who hasn't seen it too, D2 is really fun. I didn't pitch this before, and I should have. I didn't plug this before. When I first started doing Script Butcher, which is I've been doing script consulting since 2016, and one of the very first scripts I consulted on was a werewolf script called I Am Lisa, written by a guy named Eric Winkler, and he eventually, I consulted on a bunch of drafts of it, and he eventually raised funds for it, and they made it into a feature film, and then it got into some bigger film festivals over the course of the pandemic, actually, the Arrow Fest, and now it was in Redbox, and now it's not only in Redbox, but you can get it in like Barnes and Noble and Walmart, so it's really cool. It's like really rewarding. Like, this is why I do it, like to help people like turn a script eventually into a movie. And this is the second time I've been able to like go to a Walmart and pick up a movie that started as like a rough early draft that I did some notes on. So it's called I Am Lisa. Check it out if you like werewolf movies. I'm really proud of Eric and Patrick Ray and their team, and that's my one thing I have to pitch.
And
to plug.
I'm just gonna plug once again. If you're one of those people that like listening to podcasts on YouTube, I made a YouTube channel that exactly mirrors the podcast. YouTube.com/Thundergrunt Podcast. Not very creative. Exactly what you expect. So go there, and if you want to listen that way, it's appreciated. Apparently, like 2,000 people wanted to listen to our Jumanji episode for some reason.
That's insane.
I have no idea why that has so many views, but it does. Thank you, The Rock. And I think that's everything. I think we're good, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah. 60
thanks.
episodes. Good job. Woo! Yeah. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
You have just listened to Writers Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring two professionals and another guy. Available only on Thundergrunt.